Hey, welcome back to Tug of Heart. Thank you, Strong Island. We're going to kind of pick up where we left off last time. Lori is still traveling. Good for her. So let's continue to wish her safe travels and lots of healing along the way. When we were speaking last time, we were talking about grieving and the process. And so I'm going to just start I'm just going to jump into it. That's what I meant to say. Um, 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Denial, when we think about grieving, there is a moment, I think, in my life where I've said, impossible. This can't be happening to me. How is this possible? And from there, it turns to anger. Why is this happening? Why would they leave me? Why? What happened? I mean, we're looking for somebody to blame, something to blame, whether it's a circumstance, the weather, something, because it just, again, I think this is a direct result of denial. And I know in my life, I have bargained and said, wow, make this untrue, and I will in return. I will fill in the blank in return. Like how many times have we heard I would give anything for one more day? I would give anything for one more day. And then there's some depression, which I think we left off on, where it's like, I'm just too sad to do anything. I'm depressed. I'm just kind of, I'm stewing in it, and then becomes acceptance. And that is a timeline that is unique to each of us. And we become not comfortable or okay, but at peace with what has happened. If you're experiencing any of these emotions following a loss, it may help to know that these reactions are natural. I think they're natural. And that in time, I think my dad used to say, every emotion has a lifespan. So in time, it will lessen and it will become just maybe easier to deal with. So that's kind of that's just part of it, I think. And I think it's important to remember that in order to grieve and to get to the acceptance stage doesn't necessarily mean that we have to feel all these different stages. Not everyone will. Some people may not ever be in denial or angry, and they may just jump to a little bit of depression and acceptance, or some people can accept things as they are and as they're meted out. But again, it's a very unique experience. Let's see, what else did I have written down here? I am going to talk about how grief and grieving can be a bit of a roller coaster, because when you're grieving, when I'm grieving, I shouldn't say you, because I'm talking about me, what my experience is. And hopefully that helps somebody understand their own personal process. But it's like a roller coaster. Like, I'm okay, and then I'm not okay. But then I think I got it this time, but then I really don't have it this time. And that's tough. That's tough because it's like an artificial sense of, whew, wow, I can breathe. I got over it. It's full of ups and downs, highs, lows. Like many roller coasters, the ride tends to be rougher in the beginning, and the lows may be deeper and longer. But then as we near, or we start to get into the ride, either we become more accustomed to it, or we are getting through the less severe portions of the process. The difficult periods should become less intense, though, and shorter as time goes by, because it takes time to work through a loss. Even years after a loss, especially at special events like weddings and births and holidays, we're still going to experience a very, very strong sense of grief. I mean, that's how it is. I mean, the holidays, while joyous for children, oftentimes are very, very tough times for the senior members of the family. Some of the symptoms of grief. While loss affects people in a lot of different ways, many of us experience the following symptoms when we're grieving: shock and disbelief, sadness, guilt, fear, anger. These are just different things that we feel, and these are kind of go hand in hand with the stages. I think initially there's this profound sadness, and it's probably the most universally experienced symptom of grief. And you might have feelings of emptiness, despair, yearning, loneliness. We've talked about loneliness. And you might cry a lot. And then guilt. You might feel a certain degree of regret or guilt about things you didn't say or did say and should not have. You can feel guilty about feelings. I know that I have felt a tremendous amount of guilt over the relief that came. And while I told myself, you know, I shouldn't say told myself, I probably said it more out loud when my father passed. I'm like, relax at your own pace. Easy for me to say because I wasn't on the table, but I definitely said, I felt a certain degree of relief that there wasn't a struggle, that the breaths were no longer labored. And at the time it made perfect sense. I felt like very clear that you can, no pun intended, breathe easy now. You know, your worldly challenges are over. And then in time, I felt a lot of guilt about, even as much as to say, did I will my father to pass? You know, that no, I didn't, but I certainly felt guilt about my comfort in saying, let go. A significant loss can trigger anger and fear. So fear, well, if you've lost a partner or a job or a home, you might feel anxious and helpless and insecure about your future because everything was so familiar. And when we lose a loved one, oftentimes we have a certain level of regularity with which we interact. And that's why we're feeling grief, because maybe we called on Tuesdays. Maybe we had dinner on Sundays. Maybe we washed cars on Thursday. I mean, whatever the reason is, when that's gone, it's like, well, what will I do now? And there's a certain amount of fear in the unknown. I don't think I ever had like a panic attack, but I have heard of people having panic attacks. The death of a loved one can trigger fears about your own mortality as well, because you realize, and I think I've said it every time I've lost a loved one, and I've lost more than I care to remember, but it certainly triggers fears of my own mortality and how fragile life really is. And I mean, I've certainly questioned my own timeline. Anger. Sometimes nobody's at fault, but you still feel angry and resentful. Resentful that I'm left alone. My dad left me alone. My dad didn't leave me alone. He left the world. But I did feel a closeness with my father that was unique. And I certainly remember feeling angry. Physically, um, there are also symptoms of grief: fatigue, nausea, sick, lack of appetite, uh, weight loss, weight gain. Uh, your immune system is actually lowered, I've come to find out, as you go through a grieving process. And of course, just normal aches and pains. So when we think that grief is not something worth recognizing, it certainly is, because it is so profound that it can even make us more susceptible to colds and things like that, just traditional illnesses, but they can mean a little bit more if you are already mentally fatigued and exhausted and, eating with not your customary regularity. Since the experience of grieving following the loss of someone or something important tends to be so unique, it's difficult to label any type of grief as normal or abnormal. So I'm going to say that it's really normal. And when I say it's really normal, I mean whatever you feel is normal. That is your normal. We talk about the new normal. Well, I think what you feel is what you feel. And I don't think anybody can discount it. And I think it is valid. You are struggling. You are feeling what you feel. And it's real. So I think another thing that is impossibly beneficial, and Lori is an amazing example of that, because as Lori has gone through this process, it has unfolded in a way where she isolated herself a bunch, and and rightfully so. I mean, she didn't want to talk to her brother. She didn't want to smile. She didn't want to laugh. She wanted to be alone with her grief. And eventually she started to kind of seek the comfort of people. And I think that's a very, very powerful, it's a very powerful mechanism for, coping with grief. Starting to engage with family members and loved ones and friends, and they know us well. So it's important that we tap into them, because sometimes it can feel better that while a part of us has just suffered an immense, immeasurable, man, I guess COVID's making me forget things, but there's a part of us that has just been impacted. It has been, it needs triage. It has been bludgeoned. It has been penetrated to the depth that we think it is everything. But as we start to reach out to friends and family, we realize that there are a lot of other relationships that are very, very important and beneficial and useful. And while one part of us has certainly been forever changed, there's a lot of other parts of us that will flourish, and sometimes flourish, especially in a time of loss. So it's going to be important to turn to friends and family and lean on them, because the truth is they care about you and they care about me. And we always say, Lori and I, we're not qualified to be giving advice. So that none of this is advice. These are just things to consider. And I think that's the best way we can do it. Another thing, when you turn to people, friends and family, Try and remember when somebody came to you inconsolably, and I know I have, you may have felt awkward because we just don't know what to do. And when we turn to somebody for comfort, for relief, they may not know what to do. And that's okay. They're not there to fix it. They're just there to be there, just to exist in the same space at the same time that we're going through what we're going through. I think it would be unrealistic to have expectations that, like, wow, if I hang out with them, maybe they'll have the answer. Yeah, probably not, because remember that relationship that you lost is unique to you. So it's important to remember, people can feel a little bit awkward when they're trying to comfort you because they don't know what you're feeling. That is a completely unique process to you. And another good idea, and we never like to poke anybody in the eye and encourage or be rude or speak poorly about your faith, because that is another thing that's very private. But definitely, it's a great time to inspect and review your faith, because faith is exactly that. It is in your mind. It is very, very personal, and it's a good time to get into that. I actually have with me Bobby. And Bobby, are you there?
I am here.
Hey, Bobby. Listen, I've been talking a lot about loss and the grieving process, and some of the things that I've been talking about are Lori's, how she's come through this, and you've seen it from early on. And I think Lori's done an amazing job, from the beginning stages where there was just like a real isolation, and then kind of a very gradual coming out of her shell, if you will, to kind of meet with you and start this journey that you've encouraged her to travel. What would you say about Lori in particular, about her grieving process and how it's changed? Because you've known her for a good lick now.
Yeah, and I don't know when, because Lori was coming here along with the school that Seth was going to, Spark Elementary, and so I knew her then, and I knew Seth, and then I guess they stopped doing that show, and then I didn't see her for a long time. So I don't know when she came back into my life. I'm not sure how much time has passed um, since she lost. But I don't know. She's an amazing woman because I just think when I think of her, and I know sometimes it's not what we see is not really what is going on. We see somebody who's always so happy and we think everything's fine and then they're really not. But she has always been in good spirits, and it's like I know she was go through a lot, and she still is, but she really, when she was around me, she was I don't know, she was just very into, like, she was very into seeing all that I was doing here, and we kind of bonded with some of the printing and the clothes and everything. And I don't know, I think she's just she's such a sweet woman. And since I've known her, I know her heart is just so big, and she's a very warm person. And I just think very strong. That's all I just think she's got this strength about her. And, if you really think about it, it's like I've always heard that the biggest loss that someone could possibly have is when a parent loses their child, because a parent doesn't ever want to see that. Like, that's not supposed to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have to add that into the equation. We all lose people, but I don't think anybody knows what it feels like to lose one of their children. So to me, that just makes her even stronger than I can imagine. Because from what I understood is, I don't know whether my mom told me, I know one of my parents said, it's just you never want to see, your children go before you,
It's definitely not the natural order of things.
No.
I mean, we're supposed to go first, I think, before our children, and so it's impossibly challenging, to go through that. But when we think about Lori, and I see her now, and she's not here today. She wasn't here for the previous episode because she's traveling, and I'm so proud of her for being at this point in the grieving process that she can actually recognize how much life is left, and that's hard. I mean, I think that's why I wanted to come on and have this little chat, this little episode about grieving, because she's doing it, and she's doing good work.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, good. Thank you for sharing that. That was really, really.
No
That
problem.
was,
I didn't know you were going to ask me that, so I was kind of on the spot. But
yeah, no,
yeah,
listen,
no,
it's always nicest when it's raw.
yeah. Yeah, I know. I love Lori. I really do. She's a great person, and I'm glad that she's doing what she's doing, because, man, you were talking about in the beginning of your other story, the things we regret are the things that we don't do. The time that we don't spend taking care of ourselves, experiencing the world, spending time with family and loved ones. That's more important than anything. And listen. I'm just so glad that she's taking this time and living a little bit, and exploring and seeing all these new places, and I think it's great. So we're here for her when she's ready to come back. That's all I know.
Well, I know she's coming back, and she's going to come back with a fire in her heart. It's you mentioned something really important, and I guess I was alluding to it, but my father always said, the most expensive thing in life is regret. And I was like, well, what do you mean the most expensive thing in life is regret? And he said, if you reach the end of your life and you never had children, there's nothing that can buy that back.
Mm-hmm.
If you regret that you did not bury the hatchet, so to speak, if you regret not saying I love you enough to your children, to your parents, and then you lose them, nothing can buy that back.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a grieving process for that as well. But yeah, that is
Yeah,
that is a
you
lot.
never hear, even the most successful people in the world, you never hear anybody saying, "Oh, I wish I would have done more with that business. I wish I would have bought that other company." Like, it's
Amen.
not about that. Like, every physical possession that you have at that time means nothing. It's all about emotions and friendships and relationships and love, and that's what is important in life, and we don't get it until sometimes the end, unfortunately.
All right. The founder of Apple gave a really, really good speech about that included his net worth and everything. And here he was, sitting on an empire. And for what?
Hmm.
He can't pay somebody to take his place. Not with all the money.
Yeah.
He can't substitute his existence Um, so with that, thank you, Bobby. Thank you. Like us, share us, comment, contribute, visit Strong Island Radio. There's a man that lives without regret. That guy, if you can think it, he's doing it. I don't care if you need something printed up on some promotional products for your business, he's the guy. If you need some T-shirts for a charity event, he's the guy. If you need some airtime, he's the guy. Regrets very little, so thank you, Bobby, for always being there for us. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you. I'm thinking that, you know what, I haven't had any children, so if anybody would like to have a child, hit us up.
He doesn't let him go with zero regret.
They want to help out. But no, I'm only kidding. But thank you. That was awesome. You always step up to the plate and keep the show going, and I appreciate that. And it's nice working with you and getting to know you also.
Thank you, Bobby. With that, adios. We'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.